Well, our thanks as always to Home Street Bank for their support of this podcast. If you're looking for a bank that has it all, great people, great service, great rates, this is the place for you. This is my lender of choice. It should be yours as well. Go to homestreetbank.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your banking needs, both business and personal. That's homestreetbank.com. Does sales really have to be as complex as we sometimes make it out to be? I don't think so. Let's ask the question on today's episode of The Buyer's Mind.
Welcome to The Buyer's Mind, where we take a closer look deep inside your customer's decision-making mechanism to reverse engineer the perfect sales presentation. Now, please welcome your host, Jeff Shore.
Well, welcome everyone to The Buyer's Mind. I'm your host, Jeff Shore, and we're going to dive in, as we always do, to the way that a customer makes a purchase decision. That's what we're really interested in here on The Buyer's Mind. It's about crawling inside the customer's brain and trying to figure out the way that they want to buy, because our job as sales professionals is to make it easy for them to do just that. Now, today we're going to be talking to Mike Weinberg, who wrote an amazing book called New Sales Simplified. And it's really interesting because I long have held that complexity in the sales process is a bad thing. It really confuses the customer. The customer needs clarity. The customer needs simplicity. Let me bring our show producer, Paul Murphy, on this. Murph, you've probably seen this yourself. You're out there as a buyer, and especially for you, you buy a lot of tech toys and stuff. But it's got to be just so overwhelming after a while trying to just decipher how complex some of these decisions can be.
Well, they can be, especially in the tech world. But, obviously if a salesperson is good, they're able to put that into kind of common language for the average person to kind of get their head wrapped around. So whether it's an HD TV or, a digital SLR, you at least have the ability to express to somebody what it is they're getting and what the benefit of that technology is to them.
I think that's particularly interesting given the fact that oftentimes people are making a complex decision about something they just don't know that much about. So if I'm going to, for example, be talking to a financial planner about buying annuities, and I don't really understand how annuities work, I don't need somebody to get into the gritty details on yield returns and outside source classification ratings on a particular bond, right? What I want is somebody to explain to me. Let me explain to you on a top level just sort of how this works. That clarity, that simplicity goes a long, long way. Or to look at it from another perspective, I don't need my doctor to tell me why a pill works or the intricacies of what's going on in the chemical reaction of the pill. I just want to know that I can trust that doctor, and the doctor will lead me in a way that'll make me feel better. So that clarity, that simplicity is going to be critical. And that leads us to our quote of the day. It's an anonymous quote, or actually it's one of those quotes where a lot of people claim to have said it, but you're going to see it over, so I'm going to call it anonymous. But the quote is this: a confused mind says no. A confused mind says no. If I am a customer, if I am a buyer, if I'm making a purchase decision, when I am confused, I cannot find the decision. I cannot see through the stress and the complexity and the confusion to see the decision on the other side. A confused mind says no, but we typically apply that to our customers, and appropriately so. I want to apply it to you, the sales practitioner, the sales professional. If your sales process is complex, the buying process will be more so. We've got to look at it and ask ourselves the question, how do we simplify? How do we make this easier on our customer? And certainly we're going to hear from Mike Weinberg on how to do just that today. Well, let me bring you our sales tip of the day, and that is to tackle something in your sales presentation that sounds clunky. I want you to take something that sounds or feels clunky, and I want to give you this advice. Beat it with a simple stick. Write something down right now. A feature that needs an explanation, an objection that always comes out a little bit awkward, a technical detail. Simplify it into easy, top-level steps. Remember, your job is to make it easy for people to buy. keep that as your primary objective. Ask yourself, what is making this difficult? Think like a doctor. You may have to convey some technically difficult and often uncomfortable things, but how you do that is in the best interest of your customer. Your customer wants easy. Your customer wants simple. Your customer wants to be able to find the decision without having to muddle through complexity in order to get there. That's the key. Easy equals right. Well, let me tell you, I'm a proud member of a tribe of sales experts from around the world. We get together to share content, to learn from one another, basically to elevate the world of sales. And there are some really, really smart people, really talented leaders in this group. But when these sales thinkers have a question, they generally turn to Mike Weinberg. He is the leader of leaders, a brilliant sales and sales management thinker, the author of two of the most acclaimed books in sales, really of all time. Speaker, author, consultant, and moreover, just a really, really good guy. Joining us from St. Louis, Missouri, Mike Weinberg. Mike, how you doing, sir?
Jeff, I am great, and I appreciate your inflated view of me. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, I've been looking forward to this for a while. I've just loved your insights and the way that you just always seem to have a fresh and well-reasoned take. So let's just dive in here. You say right on your website that you are on a mission to simplify sales, and I know your two key books have elevated that idea. Define that mission. Give us the genesis of the concept of your mission to simplify sales.
Well, there's just so much noise and confusion today that it makes me crazy. And typically, those people who struggle in sales are the ones who tell us how complicated it is. And what I notice is that the people who tell us that sales is complicated are either really confused themselves, or they use that complexity kind of as a smokescreen, so you can't really see into their lame effort or decipher their poor results. So there's the piece of it where it's just not that complicated, and then there's the world that you and I and our friends that you mentioned in this tribe live in, where I feel like every day we're battling for the mind share and for the souls of salespeople who are just being inundated with nonsense. And every day some new self-proclaimed sales guru makes up some new truth or is trying to pitch you some must-have tool that if you just had this tool or this trick, it would fix all your sales issues. And it's created this chaos. So my mission is to call a timeout and go, everybody stop. Getting new business is no more complicated than it used to be. We just got to do the basic stuff. And here are some easy to understand, easy to implement principles. And that's where I come at it from Simplified.
I'm processing right now as you're talking, Mike, and I guess I'm coming to the reality that I've never really given adequate thought to why salespeople are constantly in this search, why they have this constant thirst for the new big thing. And I'm wondering if part of it is that so much of sales is mental and mentally grueling, and we have to deal with the issues and the objections and the rejections. We thought we had it, and then it's gone, and we got to live life on the edge because so much of our income, if not all of it, is based on commission. And I wonder if it's just that there's so much going on in the mental space of a salesperson that they're constantly waiting for and reaching for the next big thing because they're basically just living their life in kind of freaked out mode.
Boy, my brain is in overdrive just processing what you just said. Well, I'll take a shot back at you. I think there's two different extreme perspectives of why we're either so gullible or so open to looking for that quick fix or the easy button or whatever it might be. I think on one side, on the top producer side, the successful seller is always looking for the edge and is open to coaching and wants to incorporate new ideas. So they're driven to keep learning and growing, which is what winners and top producers do. But I'd say equally as popular is on the other end, there's a whole lot of lazy, complacent people that think, if I just buy this, or I just listen to this new guy who's got this, no pain, no gain, eat all the sugar you want, you're going to lose weight, diet plan for me, then I'm going to be fine. So I think on both ends, we have people, diving in, looking for the edge. Some are lazy and some are just looking to sharpen their game and take it to an even higher level.
I sort of sense that as soon as this recording is over, you and I are going to be on a race to write the blog post, "Why do salespeople freak out so much?" So let's see which one hits first. I want to start with, we're going to talk about both of the key books here in just a little bit, but I want to start with you as a customer. Okay? You're buying a watch, you're buying a television, or perhaps you're buying a new Porsche. What do you carry into that conversation with the salesperson? What's happened in your mind before you even say a word, before you meet with that salesperson for the first time?
Well, first of all, I love you. And I also love watches. So this is a great question. What's gone on in my mind, and it's hard to do this, and I'm sure it is for you as well, because I'm always wondering, am I going to get a decent salesperson who's actually going to position him or herself well and do some discovery with me? Or is it going to be like my last car buying experience, where I went into the Audi dealership looking for a new family sedan consulting car, daily driver type deal. Mm-hmm. And I sat down in this new model, and the sales guy sat down next to me, and he didn't stop talking for like 7 minutes, pointing out all this new technology that I didn't even care about. So normally when I'm in a buying situation, I've got in decently prepared because I am usually shopping for something I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. So I'm always wondering, will this salesperson know more than me? And will they be able to help me make a good decision? And unfortunately, oftentimes I'm disappointed by what I see.
It's interesting because when you look, you say, I'm wondering if I'm going to get a good salesperson. Will they know more than me? Will they be able to help me? Inherent in that is some level of hope that you're hoping that they will. And I think that this is an important point, because I think a lot of salespeople fear that here comes a customer, and because I'm a salesperson and they're a customer, they're going to hate me. They want to hate me. And I don't think that a customer wants to hate a salesperson any more than if I went to a comedy club and that I would sit down and say, oh man, I hope this next guy sucks. I really hope. They want you to be good at what it is that you do. And yet I think there's just that mental hang up that we're almost afraid of our customers even before they walk through the door.
Yeah, they do want you to be good. And what's unfortunate, and this is something I write about, it's not your fault, but it is your problem. And when I say that, what I mean is that there are lots of moron salespeople. And way before our time, there were low integrity salespeople. And there are lots of salespeople who waste buyers' time. So when you're in a selling situation, you're up against that baggage that the customer brings to the conversation. They want you to be helpful. They want you to bring value. But in the back of their mind, they're saying to themselves, I've been lied to, I've been manipulated, I have had my time wasted. So there's this hesitancy. So it's why if you're good at selling and you're honest and your true motivation, my dad taught me this when I was young. If your motivation is to help somebody else win, you're always going to do well. And if more sellers embrace that and understood they really could bring value and they want the best for the client, even if it means you don't get this sale, then that's a heck of a motivation, and that's transparent. People can smell that on you. So that's how we need to enter the, customer salesperson dialogue.
Hey, Murph, just to let you know, it's not your fault, but it is your problem. Let's just steal that blatantly. Let's call that our own quote and use it shamelessly going forward. All right. Awesome. I love it. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. It's such a great way to be able to look at it. Stop moaning and complaining about the experience that your customers have. Just deal with it and prove that you're a better person than they are. And that's just the way it goes. Mike, you're big on storytelling. You talk about that a lot in New Sales Simplified. We share that common theme here on The Buyer's Mind quite a bit, actually. Tell us about the power of story and why you are so convinced that we really need to get this right.
Yeah, and I love that you're big on this topic. And it's interesting, Jeff, as I was listening to a few of your past episodes, I heard one with our mutual friend, Anthony, where you dug in really deep on the story. Mm-hmm. I think it's a big topic. I think in the old days, salespeople, were used to be accused of puffery, exaggerating and overtelling their story. And today I see the opposite. I see salespeople that don't put a pretty bow on what they're selling. There's no gift wrap. There's no sex appeal. They just, with no passion and no care, put it out there. And it leads to terrible, terrible consequences. I think your story, and when I say story, I don't necessarily mean the art of storytelling, which is really important in sales. Mm-hmm. I mean, your story is like the collection of talking points you use when you describe what you do and how you help people. And your story is so important among all of your sales weapons because pieces of it end up in everything else you do. Your story is in your voicemails, it's in your emails, it's on your social media profiles, it's in your sales calls, it's in your presentation decks, your proposals, your contracts. Your story is so important. And yet you talk to most salespeople and you say, hey, tell me about your business. What do you do? And what they say sounds awful. Mm-hmm. It's self-focused. It's boring. It's complicated. It's blah, blah, blah. We do this, we do that, or it's so complex, you can't understand it. And so this art of storytelling or crafting your message, your value prop or your elevator pitch. And I hate those words because no one knows what they mean. And frankly, most people don't sell in elevators. So I just call it your story or your power statement. You need a strong, compelling, customer issue focused and differentiating story. And if you have that, if you have those collection of talking points, everything changes when you sell. Everything is easier and you have more confidence and you know what you say has power. So that's why I write about it and talk about it so much.
It's interesting. I just got back. You and I were talking offline here, but I just got back from this 3-day camp on how to improve my presentations, especially my keynote presentations. And there was a guy there that was also in the class, and I asked him, "What do you speak on?" And he said, "Leadership and change." Okay, so already I think I'm a good guy, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and allow him to elaborate on that a little bit because he's only said 3 words, leadership and change, and I'm already half asleep, right? So I said, well, what does that mean? What is your take on leadership and change? He said, well, I help people become better leaders, and I help them to manage with the change that they're going to have. And I checked out. It was it. There was no story behind that. And how many people out there want to talk about leadership and change? Well, roughly the same number of people who claim to be experts in sales. And so I look at it even from that perspective is how do you share a story that somebody actually wants to tell and retell and hear? What does that look like? But one of the things that I love about the book is that you really sort of get into the anatomy of storytelling. How do you craft a good story? It's compelling, and I got the sense even in reading the book that it's something you really enjoy. That's the fun part of sales.
I do because somehow this came either naturally to me or I picked it up growing up in my dad's house, but there was the importance of being able to communicate value. And that's really the yardstick, is value. And if you just think about it at the simplest level, in the real world, forget sales, in the real world, when 2 normal humans are talking to each other, who do you enjoy spending time with? Is it the friend who's always talking about himself? Or is it the friend who brings you into the story and asks how you're doing? And that same truth applies in sales. The customer, the prospect, doesn't give a rip about you and how smart you are or how great you think your product or your offering is. They want to know what's in it for them. And that's my mantra. Mm-hmm. Your story is not about you. It's not what we do. It's what we do for our clients or what we achieve for them or the outcomes that we deliver. If you want to get someone interested, talk about them and the things that are on their mind. Mm-hmm. They've got pains they would love to have removed. They have problems that need to be solved. They probably have opportunities they're looking to capture. And we all know they're looking for new and better results. All of those are outcomes. And when we frame our story, our messaging around the outcomes that we help our clients achieve, everything changes. They no longer see you as this pitch man who's pushing product or a service. And most people in sales, what do they lead with? The product. Mm-hmm. And immediately the buyer shuts down, the defenses come up. It's commoditization. If you want to justify your premium price, you want to get noticed, you want the buyer to put their defenses down so they'll dialogue with you and open up, then when you start talking, position yourself with the issues that matter to the customer. You solve these problems, you remove these frustrations, you achieve these results, and then everything changes because the story is now about what's in it for the customer, and now you're positioned and perceived totally different than most people who sell.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I walked into a shirt store in Chicago, downtown Chicago, Hammer Shirts. I'd never heard of it before. And I just didn't walk right up to the salesperson. I did what you do in a clothing store. I walked right up to the shirts. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, "Good afternoon." And he said, "Can I take 30 seconds and just tell you the story of Hammer Shirts?" And right from the very beginning, I love that because it's only 30 seconds and there's a story about these shirts. Really? How often do you have a story about a shirt? But the first thing, and of course I said yes, and the first thing he said was, the first thing you need to know is that Hammer Shirts are not for everybody. They're for people who are in generally good shape, who take care of themselves, who are not looking for a bunch of baggy shirt material out of the back of their pants when they take their suit coat off. These are business shirts for people who take care of themselves, as clearly you do. So where do you think I am right from the very beginning? I mean, I am all in before he goes on to part B of his discussion.
No kidding.
It was awesome. And by the time we're done with this little 30 seconds, I'm going to buy at least one shirt. The only question is how many. Oh, and by the way, I've not yet looked at the price. So
and you don't care. And honestly, it didn't really matter at that point, did it?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. But to this day, I can tell you, the owner of the shirt company goes to Milan twice a year. He only makes 30 of each shirts. And I mean, I can tell you the story back. That's what happens. And I teach this a lot, the idea that the only story that really matters is the story that the customer is going to tell after they talk to you. Yeah, but I think we tend to look at it and say, what is the story that I want to tell? Who's the hero? Who's the hero? Let's shift gears here and talk about the close. Let's talk about asking for the sale. But I want to talk about it from the customer's perspective. How do you think most customers feel about the close, about that moment where we're going to ask for the sale?
Well, I think there's the stereotypical response, which is, they're nervous and they're uncomfortable and they don't want to be asked to buy. In my own experience, I tend to like when someone says to me, this seems to make sense based on our conversation, and they recap what we talked about and why this makes sense and it's a good fit and I'm going to get value. We should probably do this. And I think, you know what, we should. Thanks for suggesting that I do what makes good sense for me and that I'm going to benefit from. So I'm not a huge, proponent of gimmicks or closing techniques. And, we have our friend Anthony, we talked about, who's got this great book now on closing. Mm-hmm. But, he jokes that it's really not the last close. It's all the commitments we make all along that get the buyer to trust us and demonstrate that we're worthy of their time and their input and their decision making. So I like to be very simple at the end of a sales process and simply look at the buyer. I like to make sure that we're on the same page, and I want to find some objections, because usually deals that go dark or prospects that go away, there's something that bothered them or something that's not a fit that we didn't discover. Mm-hmm. And they were either too nice or too deceptive to tell us what was bothering them. So I like to just stop and ask, hey, what are you thinking? I feel like based on what we share with each other, this is a good fit. You're going to get a lot of value. This makes sense. And then I just stop and I look at them and I say, what do you think? And then I don't say another word. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those issues in sales, right? Where salespeople love to talk. You got to let that hang out there and deal with the awkward silence, because I need to know, does this buyer think we've got something here? Mm-hmm. And if not, or if I see hesitancy, or let's say, I'm going to use software here just because it's simple. Let's say they're a Microsoft shop and the solution I'm selling is Oracle based. And this guy's telling me all along, we're really interested. This sounds great. We'd love to do business with you. But at the end, we've never dealt with this elephant in the room that they've only bought Microsoft, and you've got this Oracle-based thing. I'm going to look them in the face and go, hey, let's talk about this. You've always bought Microsoft. This is Oracle. Are you good with making this kind of change? I mean, you've never done this before, and what will get in the way of us doing this? I want to pull the objections out so I can deal with them and make sure everyone's comfortable. So that's kind of where I like to make sure we're on the same page, and then logically flesh out the objections. And then the last thing I like to do is I'll ask the customer, what would you like me to do now? When I have even now in my current business, I'm having a long conversation with an executive about some training or workshop, and I know it's going well and they're interested. I'll ask them at the end, what do you think's a good next step, or what would you like me to do now? And then my key here is we have to get them to commit to their next step. We can't just give ourselves work. So when I ask them, what do you think's a good next step, or what do you want me to do? I always come back with a quid pro quo. Okay, that sounds good. I'll go do that proposal. And then you agree, we're going to talk again on Wednesday with the rest of your team and review this together. Mm-hmm. So it's, I'm doing this and you're doing that. Let's agree and schedule it. Mm-hmm. So that was probably a longer answer than you were looking for, but that's my thinking. It's not pressure, but you are leading somebody somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, that's what we do. We are influencers. If you don't influence, why are you there? I mean, I can think of no higher pressure than to force your customer to come to you hat in hand and ask permission if they can buy.
That's great.
Right. Mike, I can't thank you enough. That was just such a phenomenal conversation. We're going to have to do it again sometime.
Oh my gosh, you've got me totally energized, and I love this show. And thank you so much, Jeff. Great being with you, and all the best. And here's to many new sales for your listeners.
Murph, that guy was great. I've Mike and I have been communicating for some time. That's the longest conversation we've ever had. But man, I just dig that guy.
Well, it's not your fault, but it is your problem.
Such a great quote. That's ours. It's a Jeff Shore original officially now.
It is now.
It's really, really good stuff. And I love the way that he looked at it, where he didn't put salespeople as, whiners or criers, but he did put the burden of responsibility on their shoulders, right?
Well, and it does come back to being honest in your motivation, right? Are you doing what's best for your customer, or are you just trying to push something down their throat?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea that when he's going into an environment, he is wondering if he's going to get a good salesperson. He's wondering if they will know more than he will, whether they will be able to help them. And there is that concept of, we don't hate salespeople, right? I mean, Murph, you're the backstage guy, but you're still a consumer. And when you're going into a consumer environment, I'm assuming you don't go in hating the sale. I mean, you may have questions about the salesperson. We all do, but I'm assuming you don't hate the salesperson.
Don't hate the salesperson. I just don't want them to annoy me. And usually, if I have questions, I want them to be helpful.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I also loved Mike's take on storytelling, and this is something we talk about a lot on the Buyer's Mind. It is so critical. And one of the things that we look at in that question of storytelling is who is the story about? And over again, when we see stories go wrong, when we see salespeople or organizations just miss this, it's usually because we're talking about motive. We're talking about who that sale is about and who the star of the show is. So we have a story that's all about the product, or it's all about the company, or it's all about the warranty. And we've talked about this before. I've certainly talked about this before, the concept that the only story that really matters is the story that the customer is going to tell to someone else. And so our job is to plant stories into the brains of customers, just like that Hammermade shirt story that I told just a little while ago. Our job is to plant stories into the brains of the customers that they want to grasp onto, that they want to tell. We're not trying to pitch something here. We're not trying to brainwash anybody. We're just trying to look at it and say, this is a story that you want to tell anyway. How do we make that easy for them? And so I'm just going to challenge you right now as you're listening to this episode to think about that from the perspective of your stories. And I'm going to just throw out this one test here. Who is the hero? Who is the hero of your stories? Is it you? Is it your company? Is it your product? Or is it the customer? Make the customer the hero of the story, and everything changes. Well, if you're enjoying The Buyer's Mind, we really appreciate it if you subscribe to the podcast. It would mean so much to us. And if you love it, leave a review. Thank you so much. That's a wrap on The Buyer's Mind for today. I hope you enjoyed it. You can find everything you need at jeffshore.com. But until next time, my friends, go out there and change someone's world.